Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Just that question.
Places, everyone.
That's why they were there.
This is not a rehearsal. Hi, welcome to CiNPA, early March 28th.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Brad. I know you're there, by the way. Come on in. So, next month's meeting, just to give you a little advances, a gentleman named Troy Davis is from a company called Lampros Labs, which Brian connected us with. And he's going to talk about cryptocurrency as the future of money. This SBS SIG had a meeting last month, and we talked about cryptocurrency mining with more technical. This is going to be a little bit more just future, what to expect. And
He does mining as well.
okay,
Yeah.
so it should be interesting. Tonight we have a few gentlemen here from DCS. They're going to teach us a little bit about printing. I'm going to turn the floor over to Marty. It's right on the wall here. Oh, but Chip's going to talk.
I'm going to do a short introduction even though he's right here.
All right, I'll introduce you and then.
Act like I'm not here.
That's fine.
This is Chip. Take it away.
Hi there, everybody. I see some familiar faces. Miles, Brad. I see some new faces too. Before we get started, can we go around the room and just introduce ourselves and whether what it is that we do, whether we were manage an IT staff somewhere or manage our own company. Possibly, you want to start?
Well, I'm Kyle, so most of the guys know who I am. But anyway, they also know I'm officially retired. I've closed everything else down. I'm going to take some classes with security. I'm just going to do some penetrating testing. I got tired of trying to protect people from themselves. So, anyway, next.
Hi, I'm Eric Kramer. I was an IT manager for St. Aloysius. I quit just about a month ago to go work for Eric Cornell, who's helping me forge a new path in life. And I'm very fortunate to have met him, and I love him to death.
What was your name again?
Eric Kramer.
Nice to meet you, Eric.
I'm E2.
E2.
You got a great mentor there.
He's E1. Or the older guy, or the other unicorns. Excuse me.
Are we all introducing ourselves?
If you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm Sharon West, and I'm here to learn what you're going to teach us.
My name is Ryan McDonald. I work with CenturyLink. Well, we do IT solutions, telecommunication, and security.
Matt Shear, Systems Security Engineer at First Financial Bank, also the CiNPA Security SIG Chair, and we're meeting, just heads up, week from tomorrow. See me if you want details, and been a long time member here, and I go and do InfoSec talks at big conferences.
Bill Myers, I'm here basically to learn about printer, copier, problem solving, in case we ever get called upon to do that, because it plugs into the wall for response.
Yep.
Or Chad Glosson, I'm a network engineer at CiNPA.
Brad Green, Southwest Ohio Networking, the independent network consultant, and worked with DCS with some of my clients in the past. Last time I did copying, we used tracing paper. So.
My name's Ron Sherman. I used to be in the networking industry, and I have recently switched over to Western Southern as a .NET developer. I've been there for 4 years.
Relative. My name is Alan Miller. I'm president of CiNPA, consultant, and my focus is voice over IP phone systems.
Doug Johnson, I'm QA test lead at University of Cincinnati IT Group. And LinkedIn told me I've been working there for 3 years.
Well, it must be true then.
Yeah.
I'm Grant Beckmeyer. I'm IT support at Simply Money Advisors. I here every month for the pizza.
Somebody's telling the
Can't
truth.
Can't go wrong with that. Last but not least,
I'm Walter. I'm in school at Indiana Tech right now, Bachelor of Science in IT, and I'm CiNPA's official videographer.
there we go. Perfect. Okay. Well, today what we're going to talk about is, as we have up here on the screen, it's tips and tricks diagnosing printers and copiers. So if we're talking with some of the members that we've done some business with over the past year since we last spoke, there's definitely a need. It seems that for a lot of people to have some more. Well, if I see this, if I see that, what steps do you guys take? So we're here to kind of open the doors there and share some secrets and some things that aren't secrets, but I'll tell you guys a little bit about some tips and tricks to where you guys can take the diagnosing steps. First off and second off, appreciate the members who have reached out and who have worked with us. Brad, Eric, E2. I know you and I have had a conversation too with a couple of you guys' clients, with Eric, E1, and so we appreciate that very much. And I'm going to turn the floor over now to Marty.
Well, thanks for being here tonight, and we're going to share our secrets with you. Maybe not all of them, but we'll do what we can. You want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
If you have a question, you're free to ask. So we're not going to be that structured here tonight. We're about DCS. I don't know how many of you know about us from CHIP, but we've been around since '79, morphed quite a bit since that time. Started off as a specialty software writer, and then moved into peripheral supplies, and we just grew from there. We are a service company. We service, of course, not only copiers and printers, but label printers, wide format printers, and we've even got into some Ergotron. If you know the name Ergotron, they're really a lot of hospitals and medical facilities use them for emergency medical records carts that roll around, batteries down base. We support those, and then anything that hangs on the wall from Ergotron. The workstations that pull out, and the nurses can sit by the bed. So we do a lot of work in those medical markets with that. We have a 15,000 square foot facility in Franklin. Been there since 92. At one time, we were one of the largest toner remanufacturers in Ohio, back in the probably mid-90s. I joined them in '94, and with a team of 3 doing cartridge remanufacturing, and grew to a team of 12, setting cartridges all over the United States. We serve Dayton, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Columbus markets, and we have 3,300 plus customers. Okay. What we're going to look at is 2 different categories, main categories of copier and printer issues. First off is machine function. You've got a problem with the machine function, meaning you're not getting an output. Okay. Second is you're getting an output, but the quality is very poor. So you have to look at a different section for that. We'll look at machine function first. Some of the most important information you can provide to your service provider is the make and the model of your machine. You'd be surprised how often we get calls with people that give us the wrong number, or somebody who doesn't even match the model of machine that they have. You cannot do a lot of interpretation of codes without an accurate model and make. First thing that we want to focus on is machine codes on the copier or printer. There really are 2 types of codes that you get in general. You can get an error code. Doesn't mean that your machine has stopped, but you're getting a code that's telling you something needs attention. Some subsystem needs attention. Okay. or you can get a PM code. PM codes just tell you that you've got something coming up. It's near its wear point. Doesn't mean it's going to fail, but it's getting near the recommended either turn of drum or turn of a rotation or a count, because the machines, of course, do pace counts, but they also do rotation counts. So some manufacturers say that the rotation counts are the most important thing. Don't worry about the pace counts. If you got a pace count coming up, but the rotations aren't there, and your print looks good, continue on. But if you get the rotation count, then they suggest that you do the maintenance that's due. Okay. Most copier error codes, usually it's a letter followed by 3 digits. Sometimes there's a hyphen, sometimes there's not. But what we see in most copiers, that follows that guide. Next thing we want to look at is paper jams. Paper jam is probably the most kind of fault that you're going to find out there. There are a lot of different reasons for it. Important to know, to be able to tell us, where is that jam? Is it in the LCF, which is a large capacity feeder? You know, it sits on the right side usually and holds 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pages. Is it actually in the machine? Or is it in the document feeder on top, your ADF? Or is it in the finisher, which is usually on the left side? If it's in a copier, in a machine, you want to kind of narrow it down a little bit. If you can tell us, is it from a specific tray? A lot of times it's just a paper guide, or you've got paper loaded poorly. We see that a lot where people just grab, a packet of paper, rip it open, and just kind of throw it in there at the bottom, handful, gets curled up underneath, and you'll get a jam every time. The other thing it could be is it could be worn rollers. If you got everything loaded right and you're still getting it, the paper jam, then that's probably the next thing that we would look at is whether the rollers, what's the age of the rollers and what's their condition. If you got a jam, most copiers have a panel LCD screen that tells you the steps to walk through for jam removal. So that's good. That's a good thing to follow through. Go through where it comes, go through the steps, clear the machine, know where the leading paper is. How far did it get? That doesn't mean that the jam was there, because it could be still something in the tray. But keep an eye on that. Fire it back up, see what happens. If it jams in the same spot, it could be something there. It could have been a previous jam that didn't get cleared properly, or all the paper didn't come out. Key thing, removing jams. Follow the steps on the panel. That's a good place to start. When you open up the panels to pull the paper out, if there's pressure on the panel or on the paper, pull slowly. Okay? A lot of times you get mad. There's a jam, end user. I don't got time for this. We'll pull it out. They'll do more damage. They'll break plastic. They'll leave paper behind, which is always a problem. Most copiers these days have handles, knobs that are green or some color that are user-friendly. And those are used to rotate different rollers to be able to force the paper either back farther in or to back it out. Those are really handy to have. So always encourage people to use those. And make sure you get all the paper. If you've got one you're pulling out, say in a laser printer, and on the back, maybe it's up in the fuser somewhere, you want to make sure that as you pull out, if it doesn't come out because it's hot, it's brittle, it's going to tear, make sure that you work your way back in to get as much of that out. Lay it down, see if you got it all. Because if you didn't, you're going to end up with another jam right there. And that may not be the original problem. It might have been from some other point, but now you're creating an issue up there. You don't have all the paper. When I first got into the industry, I was really hungry to read about laser printers and everything. Wasn't a lot of stuff to read, but I found a white paper from Xerox, and they said the worst thing you can do to your laser printer is put paper in, because it's dirty. There's fragments in it, and it just really gets your your machine all dirty. So
You still need to fan the paper before you put it in for
I
modern
think it's a
machines?
good idea. Yeah, and it helps you to get it all straight. You know, if you got it in there and you grab a handful and you pull it up, everything kind of wiggles back in within your guides. So that's a good idea.
Especially like for some of our clients, excuse me, you know, we work with a lot of manufacturing clients, and you know, in plants where there's humidity and the air is not regulated as well as it probably should be. Goodness, excuse me.
Kind of like here.
Worse, but yes. Fanning that paper would definitely help get some of that humidity out, and the amount of times when we see that, you know, repetition of jams and things like that from humidity is a big thing, just because it's how the humidity affects the paper, and you may think that you have a machine issue, but really you have a paper issue. So fanning that will definitely help.
If you're working with an ADF and you get some jams, one thing to look for is to make sure the original doesn't have a staple in it. You would be surprised, or maybe you would be surprised, how often we come across that, where an end user will throw something up to copy, and instead of lifting up the, just do it for the flatbed, they lift up the ADF, they'll just throw it right in the ADF and fire it up. Also, if you have continued issues in the ADF, you might open it up. Usually there's a handle that you can pop it up and look in there and see. There could be a staple left in there from somebody before you. Okay. All right, another issue that you have with machine function is machine settings. The machine stops and is waiting for user intervention. One of the things you want to make sure is that an end user doesn't come up and select some kind of weird paper, and then the machine's sitting there waiting for you to load paper in the bypass tray or tray 1 if it's an HP product. We saw this the other day on a big production machine at a local grocery store, that somebody had come up and hit color. There was an actual tray setting button on the panel that somebody had come up and changed it away from its normal original setting, and so that stopped the machine, and then everything else backed up against it. So when we got there, we looked through it a little bit, and sure enough, there it was. Well, the first thing we did after we cleared up the job was to get rid of that button. It's no longer on the panel. So once we got that off, got it set back to original, any type, any plain paper, any type, we were good to go, and we took off. They were very happy. And then we showed, of course, every location has a gatekeeper, and there's a receptionist that sits right around the corner from this machine. So she's the one that we trained on how to get past that, if there any way that they could get into it and make that same mistake. So now she knows how to do it, and people always go to her when they have problems. So now she knows what to look for. One of the things that's important is doing a power cycle of a copier or a printer. Printers are normally, laser printers are pretty simple. I mean, you just power off the switch, right? Copiers are a little more finicky, and you want to be careful how you turn that off. You want to make sure that you're using the sub switch on the panel first. Let it power down when it gets to that either blinking or non-blinking, whatever. Every machine's a little bit different. But then there's a main power on the side of the machine, sometimes in the back or inside of a cabinet, you flip. But that's the proper way to do it. We had a run-in with a manufacturer a couple years ago whose hard drives were not going back to a ready state. They were sitting over the disk, and whenever the power went off, if you just did a massive power down, crashed it, and bye-bye hard drive. And they had to do a firmware update to bring that back to a ready state. So powering those off, whether it's somebody flipping it off or they have a brownout or something that caused that thing to drop, was causing all kinds of problems. Okay, if you're still going to go down through a power cut to reset the machine, we recommend that you unplug it from the wall for 30 seconds. Okay, and then plug it back in, reverse the steps of power on. Some printer codes These are some of the common HP printer codes that we see. 10-0000 is a chip issue, and it doesn't mean that the chip's bad, but it's saying that the printer, the HP printer, how many guys are in HP environments? Are you guys all, or Lexmark? Anybody? Brother?
Just they're
Samsung?
all over the place. No Samsung.
Okay. All right, so
I have a brother printer at home, I love it.
they have some features. So to the 1010 or the 1000, the 4 zeros, means that the printer cannot see the chip. Either the chip's not there or it's not communicating with it properly. You want to pull
That chip's on the cartridge.
Yeah, on the toner cartridge. You know, HPs have the tips on the toner cartridges on the leading edge generally, somewhere. If you see that, one of the things you can do is pull the cartridge out, see what that chip looks like. If you can blow it off without putting your fingers across it, you don't want to short it out, because then you'll be getting the next error if you do that. But pull it out, put it back in, see what it does. And the other thing you can do is power down the machine, bring it back up. The 10X000 error is that the machine sees the chip, but it can't read and write to it. So it's probably a chip error. Depending if it's a monochrome, it'll just be 1010. If it's a color machine, 1010 is black. I think 1020 is cyan. 1030 magenta. 1040 is yellow. Somewhere there. The 13XX is a paper jam. 13 is the jam code. The lower the number, the sooner the jam is happening. If it's a 1310, it's happening right on one of your trays. Depending on how many trays you have, it could be a tray 2 or tray 3, tray 4. Farther up it gets, it's talking about the transport area in the back or into the fuser, like a 60 is typically in the fuser. A 49XX is typically a corrupt print job, and these are the steps they go through to get that out. And you guys probably have had to go through and clear out print queues in your past. So turn the printer off, disconnect from the network, clear the print queue, and then reconnect and power back up and see where you are at that point. We've had to chase down some 49 errors in the past. If it continues to come back, there's probably a machine issue. Unless you've got one guy just continuing printing that job. Sure.
I worked at one place and the people worked from home and then they came to work and they sent their print jobs and they locked the machine up. But that was under each person, so until they came to work and go look for the print job. But the way they went, I guess they got around it, is everybody had a code. So if their job hung up, you could still print your job.
Yeah. We've got a customer that has a lot of salespeople with laptops, and they've been known to walk in and try to print something and close it up. Okay, the other common HP is a fuser temp error, 50XX, and there's no way around that. It's dead. Sometimes we see fusers right out of the box. It happens. Put it in and we get a 50 error.
Is T stand for temperature?
Yep. I got lazy. And you're right, well, sorry.
Generally an overheat.
Or underheat, generally underheat.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's from the fuser. So depending on the make and model, it may make sense financially to put a new maintenance kit in it. Depending, if it's a $300 printer, probably just go out and buy a new printer, But if for some of the more department machines that are $800, $500, $1,000, which is what a lot of people have, it makes more sense financially to swap out those maintenance kits because they're a couple $100.
Okay.
And then you'll get another 100,000 pages out of that machine.
HP fusers are pretty much all in one. When you put one in, you're getting a new heat roller, pressure rollers, the thermistors, thermostats, all wrapped in a pretty stout little package. With a copier, you can replace pretty much every individual component in there. So a rebuild on a copier diffuser is and sometimes less expensive.
You're talking about the HP, when you replace the toner cartridge, everything's in it. is what you
Toner
said.
cartridge too, but we're talking about the diffuser in the back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, toner's similar. It's you replace the toner. in
Some of them have
laser
the drum
printer,
and all of that in it.
Drum, wiper blades, charge rollers, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in a copier, everything is rebuildable as part of a maintenance cycle. Okay, Lexmark codes, the two most common ones are a 31 defective print cartridge, and sometimes you'll see that right on your screen. And the 900, which is similar to the 49, it's a corrupt job. And you want to go through the same steps with your Lexmark to clear out your queue, reboot the machine, bring it back up. All right, now we'll talk a little bit about print quality. One of the most common issues that we see is lines on the page. A couple different areas to look at, to pay attention to. If you're copying and printing from a flatbed, if it's a copier, you probably have a dirty charge grid. If it's in a monochrome copier, there's a panel you pull down. You probably have a little brush that's actually in there. Just grab it, take that thing, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and you're good to go. Color printer will have 4 slots, and usually that brush is on the panel itself. You pull that off and do each of those colors, or the color that's giving you the lines. Okay. If it's a printer, then your lines could be from your toner cartridge. Since everything's in there together, first thing you would want to do is try another toner cartridge if you have one. We always recommend you have an extra toner cartridge.
And with printers too, we find a lot of the time that if you start having quality issues with printers, run a supply status test because sometimes what will happen is if all the toner is out of the cartridge, but yet for some reason the machine hasn't triggered that, there could be no toner in the cartridge, and that's what's causing the issue, the quality issue.
Another common issue is just general poor print quality. One of the things that we see on a regular basis is that your copier or your printer is not plugged into a wall directly. It's in some kind of a sharing device, a safety strip of some type, and that's a big no-no. Copiers and laser printers are really greedy with power, and you'll see all kinds of weird things happen if you have a situation where somebody's printing and you walk over and shred some paper on the same power strip, and that copier is not going to like that. Shredder doesn't care, but the copier will not like that, or a laser printer. If you're in a color situation and your color is off, too light, too dark, we suggest that you do a power cycle. Most HPs do a calibration when they power on, or after that, every 50 to 100 pages, somewhere in there. So if you're seeing something that's off, power cycle is a kind of to trick it into doing a calibration. If you're a missing print, or you've got dots on the page, you can check your flatbed glass if it's a copier, or an HP MFP. There may be something on there. There might be some whiteout on there. Who knows what ends up on glass these days. If you're in a situation where you're getting wrinkled or crinkled paper, it could be, in a copier situation, it could be worn rollers, or it could be paper loaded poorly. If you're in a printer situation, then it's probably a fuser. When we see fusers go out, the first indication is that it's giving you a crinkled paper coming through. Skewed output. If you're print copying from the glass, it could be, again, paper that's loaded poorly. The adjustable paper guides may not be pushed up exactly where it's supposed to be. So there might be just a little bit room Not enough to hit the sides of anything as it comes up and through, but just enough to be a little bit at an angle. It could be out of calibration. Again, trying to do a power cycle. If you're printing from the ADF, it could be actually either the top cover is twisted, and it could be it just needs an alignment. We had a customer downtown Dayton that had a pretty big monochrome production machine. For some reason, I don't know if somebody was sitting on it, but we had to go back a couple times and realign that thing. And it had, of course, the bigger copiers have alignment pins that you use to get everything started straight. And then there's some internal stuff that you can mess around with and get it skewed if you can't get to the top where you want it to be. So we were able to get it twisted back where it needed to be, but we had to do it twice, like a month apart. Haven't had to go back, not one. Okay. Oh, there's that info. I think is that it?
That's it.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, yeah. Any questions? Situations you've run into that we might be able to help you with? Yeah.
When it's low on toner, is there anything wrong with taking it out and shaking it though?
What kind of machine are you talking about?
If you're getting low on toner and you don't want to put
Black,
it in,
like a black laser
Yeah.
printer? You can do that with a black laser printer. I would never do that with a color.
well, yeah, I don't
The
know.
toner is entirely different inside of a color machine,
Okay.
and you start shaking it when the seal's been pulled, that stuff liquefies and goes everywhere. So, yeah, absolutely, with monochrome, sure. You can get, 1,000 pages, sometimes a couple thousand pages out of it.
And with copiers too, we suggest, like usually copiers, toner cartridges come in giant tubes. We always suggest prior to installing them in the machine, you give them, a good little bounce back and forth. We see that, at times if a cartridge has been sitting too long, whether it's sat on its end or sat on one end or the other, the toner could become compacted at one end, and those have augers in there. And so if the auger ends up not being able to get all the toner, then you're just throwing money out the window, basically. So.
Yeah, the copier tubes are always best laying down, not standing up on end.
For storage, you mean?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just kind of curious, so we've got something sort of new we've been looking at, we've been kind of incorporating. It's running Windows 10 IoT. Have you encountered any of those, and if so, what are your takeaways?
I haven't seen any of that yet.
Okay.
What kind of an issue are you having?
I'm just curious from just, an operational perspective, anything from security to, it's new to the environment, so, that's just kind of curious.
Okay.
I imagine more devices will probably start incorporating that, but, I thought it was interesting because, a lot of our stuff has historically, for the more complex systems, have been running, like a Linux or Solaris-based type of core operating system underneath the hood. So very different to see something that's now essentially a Windows system. At this point, the printer is becoming more like a workstation in a lot of regards than it is an actual printer, copier.
Sure. I know that HP had an issue a couple of years ago from a security standpoint where somebody was able to hack in, but they've done some firmware updates, and so yours, it's all pretty locked out now. But other than that, I haven't heard of anything.
And speaking of that, when it relates to the printers, any device can be hacked. I mean, we all know that. When it comes to laser printers, there's not a whole lot of information that they can get. If somebody were to hack in and say, look at a memory chip of some sort, copiers are a little bit different. And there's some HP models even that are a little bit different. But if they have hard drives on there, then it's something that to be aware of. So a good example is yesterday I was talking to a local government entity in our area, and they have a Canon machine that they have on their network, and they are using it as a data center. So they have all of their bank statements, all their financial reports, they're a court, so they've got all their court documents. I mean, anything you can possibly name they have stored on this machine, and they're using it as a shared server so that everybody has access to it. And that is, they didn't know any better. So I was telling her yesterday, it's like, we've got to make a big change here. That's, all it takes is one person to hack in, and you can grab all that information in a second.
So they're using the printer as a file server, basically?
Yes, they're using the copier as a file server.
That's
Yeah.
dumb.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So just something to be aware of. So copiers do. Most copiers these days will come with some sort of a security kit. We are a reseller of Sharp equipment, and Sharp has many facets to their security kits. They're actually one of the higher rated companies when it comes to security. So we can lock down every single port on the machine, so that you virtually eliminate all potential of somebody hacking in and getting the information that might be there. So.
Anything else?
Is there any way you can tell if other customers are doing that same thing so you can fix that problem?
So the one question that you could ask is, and the only reason I found out is because we were talking about bringing in a new piece of equipment because their current machine's 8 years old, and so we were talking through the installation process and how they're currently utilizing the machine. So she had mentioned that, are we still going to have access to our forms on our machine? And I say, well, that shouldn't be a problem. We'll take the forms you have on your machine and we'll put it on the new machine. That way you guys can walk up and quickly, print off your court forms. And I said, but just to be safe, I said, can you show me what it is that you're talking about? So we walk over to the machine and she pulls up the hard drive information, and then here's all these folders of, banking deposits for the last 5 years, and all kinds of stuff. And it was like, we gotta get this out of here. This is not good. So ask your clients, how are you guys scanning? I know you guys probably know a lot of how your clients are scanning, whether it's to a network folder, whether they're scanning an email. But if anybody says, yeah, we're scanning to the copier, we're storing that on the copier, that should be a little indicator of, well, okay, what is it exactly you're scanning, and what are you doing with those documents? A lot of machines will have the ability to do that. And what will happen is you can go into the machine and grab them and take those files off, and then it will delete them off the drives. But there are some machines that will still keep those stored there. So that's basically that would be the red flag. Good question.
Yeah, I've experienced some Xerox machines where people would try to self-support and self-install them, like at Bonjour, their Apples, and then they'd send a print job or some sort of IPP printing. They'd send a print job, they wouldn't get an error code, the paper would never come out, print queue would be full, and the only way to resolve that was to actually get it set up as a regular Windows printer and send them to the Windows print queue on the server. Anything about that?
First off, I will be the first to say we're not Mac people. We see out of our client base.
This is in a mixed environment.
Right. Out of our client base, we probably see 5% of our client base is on a Mac device. Maybe a little bit more than that. Macs are very tricky when it comes to printing. They are just, it's not like a Windows where we can go in and configure ports and configure what IP they're set to and easily make changes. And so Macs are, I personally don't do a whole lot of Macs with Bonjour. We will do direct IP printing from a Mac and have the ability to go in and manage those. What queues, if there is something that gets hung up in there. So, typically what I do is if for something like that is I turn it off. I turn off the Bonjour if they have the ability to turn it off. I don't know if Xeroxes do.
They do. It hasn't been turned off or I'm thinking of, but yeah, I'll go in and I'll.
Yeah, that's what I typically do. That way, then as an IT staff, we can continue to manage those prints through the normal chains instead of having something else now that we'll have to manage.
Okay.
Good question.
Back, I don't know, about halfway through, you said the copier is rebuildable as opposed to the fuser that's all in one. Can the customer do the rebuilding, or does it have to be a service company?
So copiers and printers are very much alike and they're very different at the same time. HP printer, we'll compare an HP printer to a copier. With your HP printer, you have your cartridge, and pretty much everything is inside that cartridge. And if it's not inside that, then you have 3 or 4 other key items in that printer that control your quality and your output. Where a copier, they segregate a lot of those items. So instead of having the all-in-one cartridge, now you have a tube that just has toner in it, and they break apart all those internal pieces that like an HP cartridge would have, and they build them a little bit differently, knowing that they can get more life out of them. So where an HP cartridge will last 10,000 pages, and the only reason it goes 10,000 pages is because it runs out of toner, when in reality you probably could get 20,000 pages out of it if it had more toner in that cartridge. So the copier world has kind of taken that mentality and kind of tried to separate a lot of the key items. That way you really can get a full life cycle on them.
But end users
Yes.
They cannot.
rebuild that stuff.
No, it's very in depth, and a lot of times there's a lot of service codes that you need to go into to manipulate those machines.
And also, earlier you were talking about, was that a copier, or I guess you were talking about, this does not detect staples, but if a smartphone is smart enough to detect metal, why can't they build that technology into a copier so that you know that there's a staple there? Without
That's a great
making it
question.
cost a fortune.
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer to that. I do know that staples cause a lot of issues, so something like that would be very beneficial. We see a lot of times where customers will run staples through and it breaks items, or the worst thing that could possibly happen is it scratches your glass, and now all of a sudden you have a line down every single page and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's a very good question. I don't have an answer. Do you?
I have no answer to that.
Okay.
How do you move the big machines? We have one of the big, copier backs and everything, and they just moved it in the office and they broke it. So I was thinking that you would shut it down from the panel and unplug it, and move it, and plug it in someplace else, but they succeeded in breaking it. And it's moved it on the same floor. It didn't go up an elevator or anything.
Over thresholds? Did it go over?
No, it's all carpet.
Does it have a finisher? Does it have one of the external stackers?
Yeah.
Okay. So those external stackers, a lot of times they have the wheels underneath them, just like the wheels underneath the copier.
Right.
And what we see is that they won't have 360-degree wheels on them. So what will happen is when you try to make a turn, it's not going to turn with the machine very easily. And so what happens is you end up either pulling it apart and causing damage,
Or torquing it one way or the other.
We had to make a turn, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little chute that's probably the most important thing that connects that copier to the finisher.
Right.
And if that is torqued anyway at all, it's so slim that the paper's going to hang up there if you don't treat it well.
And I'm sure they're going to reposition again because they got to get it fixed now, so I mean, kind of give it a hint. Be a little bit more careful this time.
Well, if they can figure out how to separate them,
Yeah.
and that would be the wisest thing to do. Finishers are so complex. It's amazing what they get inside of that, that high and that wide, it's amazing what they can do. But they're a devil to work on, an absolute devil to work on.
I just wondered, they only moved it probably 100 feet and they broke it.
You should have stopped at 90. Anybody else? Yes.
So just curiosity in the war story front, what's the craziest malfunction you've ever seen, either user-induced or sort of just happened on its own, or maybe one of each?
The mouse story.
My father is a business manager at a church in Miamisburg, just south of Dayton. And we delivered a brand new color production machine for them so they could print their flyers, their brochures, their Sunday morning pamphlets. And they had a canning machine that they had sitting in the back that they were still using. And so the plan was to put this new color machine into play once that canning machine ran out of toner. They wanted to get, they wanted to get every little bit out of it. They paid for the toner. They wanted to get every, all the life out of it. So my father and I had built a new copier room. We turned a stairwell into basically a little copier room with some shelving units and stuff in there. And we had the machine sitting in there with doors closed, and nobody had access except for a couple people. And one of the women at the church, they got done with something for the kids, and they had a basket of candy, and they took that basket of candy and had that in the copy room. And I don't know how many mice there were, but there was at least one. So he opened up the door, and the wrappers are all over the ground, and he's like, "Let's, great, I gotta clean up this mess." And so they went to clean it up, and he said, I better check the machine just to be sure and make sure everything was was good to go. So he fires it up, and sure enough, I can't remember if the pages were jamming right off the bat or if there was just awful quality. Yeah. So he made a phone call to me and said, "Hey, something happened. We had a mouse get into this room, and I'm worried that it might have gotten into the machine somehow." And I thought to myself, like, there's no way. The crevices in the to get into a machine is nearly impossible. I mean, they're so small. There's no way a mouse can get into a machine and be able to crawl through a machine. So we sent a technician out there, and this machine was living in there. I mean, he had to have been. There was poop all through the machine, and it had gotten through to a lot of the imaging units and the drums, and it scratched.
There was a foam roller had bites in it.
A lot of the drums and a lot of the imaging units were scratched from the mouse trying to get through it. So a brand new machine that they hadn't even started using yet. Sadly, I think it was roughly $3,000 worth of damages. Ooh. So not a fun time for them. That's probably the worst war story.
So did you put a screen around so they can't get in?
So after that, he made it abundantly clear that there was to be no food in that room whatsoever. So they haven't had the issue since. And the machine's on the second floor too, so how the mouse got on the second floor even, I mean, it's crazy. So a bunch of unfortunate events.
That's pretty cool.
We have seen pills inside an HP printer get sucked into the toner cartridge when we tore it apart. It was actually in the dustbin with all the waste toner. We've seen
Staples or not
staples, yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Paper clips.
We've seen a small ruler, pocket ruler, actually get embedded inside, sticking halfway out of the cartridge.
You see soy sauce packet at one time?
Soy sauce packet.
I think there was a soy sauce packet at one time.
We deployed a brand new printer to a hospital that was being built, and it probably was there a month before they were going to put it in use. And when they fired it up, it didn't work. So we went back out, pulled it open. There were coffee stains on the side of it, right down to the formatter board. Brand new HP laser. It's a multifunction. So we see things like that.
We see all kinds of crazy stuff.
We've had water leak onto a big production copier that fried it. Fairly new building, three-year-old building had a huge water leak. So, okay, anything else?
Any other questions? Anything else you guys have run into? Yeah.
Is there anything new coming out with printers or copiers?
Constantly. Copiers especially. So the new thing with copiers is they want to be able to talk to any and every software application that there is. Whether it's a document management system, whether it's a back-end, ERP system, whether it's going through and using a management system that helps control and streamline printing, copiers are becoming very, very much intelligent. You know, being able to communicate with cloud products. I mean, it's endless. There's new, and it was Sharp. There's new partners every single day of software applications that that now can integrate with a simple connector. That now, instead of a customer having to have this long workaround, we can scan directly into a storage system. Printers are evolving. HP is they're an animal, for lack of a better term. Same way I'm sure with networking equipment. HP likes to disturb the market. In one way or another, they will find a way to get in there and to create a disturbance. They tried to do it probably about 8 to 10 years ago and tried to really bring a product that would take control of the copier world and really have a competitive product, and they couldn't do it. It just didn't work out. They were too expensive.
So they bought Samsung.
So they bought Samsung in the past 2 or 3 years, and so now with that they're pushing out their own product that was more of a Samsung product that's now an HP product, and they're definitely coming out with a copier line that should be pretty competitive.
Does that mean printers can watch you print like the Samsung TV?
Oh.
They gained like 5,000 patents in that purchase.
Yeah.
It was one of the things they were going after, no patents.
Jeez.
What about having something that's portable, like a printer? Is there one that's reliable, that's, like if people travel?
We see a bunch of different applications. So, for instance, like not Scott's, it's True Green. Scott's got bought by True Green. True Green, all their teams that go out, and do maintenance, they all have their own portable printers. I wouldn't say there's any that are necessarily better than the other, but there's definitely, machines that you want to stay away from. The cheaper the machine is, the shorter life it's going to have. And sadly, in a portable world, you end up having to get a cheap machine because it's a space issue. And the cheaper machines are going to be smaller, but it doesn't mean they're going to last quite as long.
What's the price point you would recommend?
So there is no specific price point, and the reason for that is because it's all application driven for the most part. So, for instance, I'm going to use one of your guys' practices, if that's all right. Use Cirrus. So Eric's got a E1, E2 has a client that had a huge color production machine. It was probably $40,000 or $50,000 purchase.
Jeez.
For doing about less than 5,000 pages a month printing. And so they were spending about, I think it was $1,300 a month for a machine that was just way overkill. So we came in and said, we can do this for, I think a couple $100. And you go to a smaller machine, smaller, footprint, and what we do is we come in and say it's all based around the printing. So depending on how much printing there is what the application is and what the price point is. So the more expensive machines are going to operate much cheaper, and your total cost of ownership is going to be much less. Does that make sense? Good question. Any other questions?
Eat?
Yes.
All right, me too, I'll second that. We got the food here, we got